Before Egypt built its pyramid, before Europe even dreamed of civilization, there was a land where kings ruled by the river's edge, a river that gave life, power, and purpose. That river was called the Nile, and on its ancient banks rose the first African kingdoms thousands of years ago. Their names are almost forgotten today: Ta-Seti, Kerma, and Kush. But they were once the beating heart of civilization. Who were these people? What did they build? And why has the world forgotten their greatness? Welcome to Untold Africa, where we uncover forgotten stories, inventions, and kingdoms from Africa that shaped the world. Here, we are reclaiming the narrative, one story at a time. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a piece of your history. The Nile River is the longest river on earth. It runs for more than 6,000 kilometers from the mountains of Central Africa to the Mediterranean Sea. For thousands of years, this river was the lifeline of civilization. Each year, the Nile would flood its banks, leaving behind rich black soil. This made farming possible, even in one of the driest regions on earth. Where there is water, there is life, and where there is life, people tend to gather. So people began to settle along the Nile's banks more than 10,000 years ago. They built small villages, planted crops, raised cattle, and fished on the river. Over time, some of these villages grew larger and more organized. They began trading, building, and even fighting for power. As the Sahara Desert slowly dried up, people moved closer to the Nile. By the year 5000 BCE, the valley had become crowded with communities that depended entirely on the river. They built huts, made pottery, and buried their dead with care, a sign that their societies were growing complex. In the far south, in what is known today as northern Sudan, the people began to build something new. They began to build kingdoms. Long before Egypt's pharaohs, before pyramids or written records, there was Ta-Seti, the land of the bow. This name came from the people's skill with the bow and arrow. They were fierce hunters and warriors who lived just south of the Egyptian border, around 4000 to 3000 BCE. Archaeologists called their culture the A group, but that's just a modern name. They lived in a land of wide valleys and rocky hills between the first and second cataracts of the Nile. Their graves, filled with fine pottery and jewelry, showed that they had kings, nobles, and ordinary citizens. They traded gold, ivory, and incense with their northern neighbors, the Egyptians, long before either side had written history. Some historians believe Ta-Seti may have been the world's first organized kingdom, even older than Egypt's first dynasty. In one of these tombs, archaeologists found a carved incense burner from a place called Kush. It showed a king wearing a white crown, the same crown that later Egyptian pharaohs would wear. Could it be that the idea of kingship itself started in Nubia, not Egypt? We can't say for sure, but the signs are clear. Long before Egypt rose, southern Africans along the Nile were already building the foundations of royal power. Around the year 3100 BCE, a leader named Nama or Menes united Upper and Lower Egypt. This was the birth of ancient Egypt, one of the world's greatest civilizations. But while Egypt grew in power, its southern neighbors, the Nubians, remained strong and independent. The Egyptians admired them for their gold and feared them for their warriors. The Egyptians called Nubia the land of gold. They sent traders and soldiers to get it, sometimes through trade, sometimes through war. Over the next 1,000 years, Egypt built forts and trading posts deep into the Nubian land. But the Nubians never disappeared. They adapted, resisted, and sometimes fought back fiercely. The Egyptians borrowed many things from Nubia: their cattle, their archery, their love of fine pottery, and Nubia borrowed too Egyptian gods, art styles, and burial customs. Their history were intertwined like two sides of the same river. But in time, the southern kingdoms would rise again, this time not as Egypt's trading partner, but as rivals. Around 2500 BCE, to the south of Egypt, a new power emerged: Kerma. This was one of Africa's first great kingdoms, and possibly the first to unite all of Nubia. Kerma's capital was a bustling city by the river. It had temples, palaces, and massive burial mounds for its kings. Some of these tombs were surrounded by hundreds of cattle sacrificed to serve their rulers in the afterlife. The people of Kerma were master builders and craftsmen. They made jewelries from gold and copper, created fine pottery, and traded across Africa. Caravans moved through the deserts to bring them ivory, spices, and even slaves. At its height, Kerma's influence stretched from modern-day southern Egypt to central Sudan. It was rich, powerful, and proud, a kingdom with its own gods, kings, and armies. Kerma became so powerful that Egypt saw it as a threat. Pharaohs from the north invaded Nubia again and again, trying to crush this southern kingdom, but Kerma did not fall easily. For nearly 1,000 years, it resisted Egyptian control. When Egypt was weak, Kerma grew stronger. When Egypt attacked, Kerma rebelled. This back and forth struggle between Egypt and Nubia was not just a war. It was a contest of identity. Two African civilizations, connected by the same river, fighting for dominance. But eventually, Egypt would win for a time. Around 1500 BCE, Egypt's mighty pharaohs finally conquered Kerma. They destroyed its capital and made Nubia a part of their empire. Temples were built in the Egyptian style. Egyptian gods were worshipped in Nubian cities. Egyptian officers collected taxes and controlled trade. But this was not the end of Nubia. It was only a pause. Over centuries, the Nubians absorbed Egyptian culture, language, and religion. But deep down, they kept their own pride and identity alive. When Egypt later fell into chaos around 1000 BCE, Nubia saw its chance. From the ashes of foreign rule, a new kingdom rose. It was called Kush. Kush began near a sacred mountain called Jabal Barkar in a city named Napata. The Kushite kings saw themselves as both Nubians and heirs to the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. They built temples to Amun, a powerful god worshipped across both lands. By 750 BCE, Kush had become a mighty force, so strong that it invaded Egypt itself. King Pele, a Kushite ruler, marched north and conquered Egypt. For the first time in history, the south ruled the north. The world called them Black Pharaohs. Under Pele and his successor, including Tahaka, one of the most famous Kushite kings, Egypt was united again, its temples restored, and its glory revived. But their reign was not to last forever. The Assyrians from Mesopotamia invaded Egypt, forcing the Kushite kings to retreat south. Even so, the kingdom of Kush remained strong in Nubia, proud, wealthy, and independent. After retreating from Egypt, the Kushite kings moved their city further south to a city called Meroë. It was surrounded by forests and iron-rich hills, perfect for industry and defense. Here, the kingdom thrived for nearly 1,000 years. Meroë became known as the City of Iron, producing weapons and tools that were traded across Africa. The rulers of Meroë built more than 200 pyramids, smaller than Egypt's, but sharper and steeper in designs. Their tombs were filled with gold jewelries, furniture, and painted walls, showing their journey to the afterlife. Unlike many ancient kingdoms, Kush had powerful queens called Kandakes. Some of them ruled as equals to kings, others ruled alone. They led armies, signed treaties, and stood proudly in history. One of such famous queens, Meroë, fought against the Romans in the 1st century BCE. When the Roman Empire tried to control Nubia after conquering Egypt, she led her armies north and pushed them back. In the end, Rome signed a peace treaty with her. One of the few times Rome accepted peace with an African kingdom as equals. This showed the world that Nubia was no one's colony. It was a power to be respected. But even great kingdoms fade away. Over time, trade routes shifted. Forests were cut down for iron smelting, and the land grew tired. By the 4th century CE, Kush was weakened by drought and new rivals. In the east, a new power rose, the kingdom of Aksum in modern-day Ethiopia. Aksum attacked Meroë around 350 CE, and soon the old kingdom collapsed. But the legacy of Kush did not disappear. In its place, new Christian Nubian kingdoms rose: Napata, Makuria, and Alodia, keeping the light of civilization alive for another 1,000 years. The story of the Nile kingdoms is not just about battles and borders. It's about human creativity, endurance, and genius. Before Greece, before Rome, before Europe's so-called civilization, Africans along the Nile built kingdoms with palaces, writing systems, trade networks, and armies. They showed the world how to organize power, how to worship gods, and how to leave a mark that would last forever in stone, gold, and memory. Their achievements remind us that Africa was no dark continent waiting to be discovered as we were taught in schools. It was a bright and living world that gave birth to civilization itself. From the first bowmen of Ta-Seti to the iron lords of Meroë, the Nile Valley gave birth to Africa's first great kingdoms, civilizations that rose, fell, and rose again. Next time, when we talk about kings and kingdoms of ancient Africa, we will leave the Nile and journey west to the land of gold and salt to discuss the rise of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, the mighty empires that ruled the heart of West Africa. But until then, remember this: Africa's story did not begin with slavery nor colonization. It began with kings and queens who ruled mightily. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, please share the video so more people get to hear of the ancient stories. Thank you and bye.